The cul-de-sac of Willow Creek Lane was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, or so they thought. Tucked away in a suburban pocket of Maple Grove, the neighborhood was a postcard of American perfection. Manicured lawns, two-car garages, and mailboxes adorned with seasonal flags. Kids rode bikes in lazy circles, and retirees power-walked at dawn, exchanging pleasantries about the weather. But beneath the surface of this idyllic community, secrets simmered, waiting for the right moment to boil over. And at the heart of it all was the HOA president, Richard "Rick" Hargrove, a man who ruled Willow Creek with a clipboard and an iron fist. Rick was 52, with a salt and pepper beard and a penchant for khaki shorts that screamed, "I'm approachable but authoritative." As HOA president for 3 consecutive terms, he was both revered and resented. He'd fine you $50 for leaving your trash cans out past Tuesday morning, but charm you with a smile at the annual block party. His colonial-style house at the end of the cul-de-sac, with its pristine white siding and emerald green lawn, was the neighborhood's crown jewel, and behind it, nestled among azaleas and a wrought iron fence, sat the pool house, a small, glass-walled structure that hadn't seen a swimmer in years. Nobody thought much of the pool house. It was just there, a relic from the previous owners who dreamed of backyard barbecues and cannonballs. Rick had mentioned once, at a homeowners meeting, that he used it for storage, boxes of Christmas decorations, old golf clubs, that sort of thing. But lately, neighbors had started to notice odd details: a flicker of light in the windows at midnight, a shadow moving behind the frosted glass, and Mrs. Delaney, the nosy retiree across the street, swore she'd seen a woman's silhouette one evening, though Rick lived alone since his divorce 5 years ago. "Probably just a reflection," Rick had said when Mrs. Delaney brought it up at the last HOA meeting, his voice smooth as polished wood. "You know how those low-energy bulbs play tricks on the eyes?" Mrs. Delaney, with her bifocals and her terrier named Biscuit, wasn't convinced. She'd been watching Rick's house for weeks, jotting down observations in a spiral notebook she kept by her kitchen window. "I'm not senile, you know," she muttered to her friend Linda over coffee. "There's something going on in that pool house. I'd bet my Social Security check on it." Linda, who preferred yoga to gossip, shrugged. "Maybe he's got a new hobby, woodworking or something." "Woodworking doesn't wear perfume," Mrs. Delaney snapped, recalling the faint scent of jasmine she'd caught on the breeze one night while walking Biscuit. The rumors spread slowly, like dandelion seeds on a summer wind. By the time the 4th of July barbecue rolled around, half the neighborhood was whispering about Rick's pool house. Was he hiding something illegal? Or, as some of the bolder residents speculated, was there someone living there? Jenna Carter, a single mom who'd moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago, wasn't one for rumors. She had enough on her plate, raising her 12-year-old son, Ethan, and running her freelance graphic design business from her dining room table. But even she couldn't ignore the oddities. Ethan had mentioned seeing a woman in a red dress slip out of Rick's backyard one evening while he was skateboarding. "She looked like she was in a hurry," Ethan said, his eyes wide. "Like she didn't want anyone to see her." Jenna dismissed it as a kid's overactive imagination. Ethan was always spinning stories about spies or secret missions. But when she saw Rick at the barbecue, standing by the grill with his usual confident grin, something felt off. He was too polished, too quick to change the subject when anyone mentioned the pool house. And when she caught him glancing toward his backyard, his eyes lingered a second too long. "Everything okay, Rick?" Jenna asked, balancing a plate of potato salad and a lemonade. He flashed his campaign-worthy smile. "Couldn't be better, Jenna. Just keeping the neighborhood in line. You know how it is." She nodded, but her gut told her he was hiding something. Rick was the kind of guy who always had an answer, but his answers were starting to sound rehearsed. That night, as fireworks burst over Willow Creek, Jenna stood on her front porch, watching the sparks reflect in Ethan's eyes. The neighborhood was alive with laughter and the smell of charred hot dogs, but her gaze kept drifting to Rick's house. The pool house was dark, its windows blank. Yet for a split second she thought she saw a curtain twitch. "Mom, you're staring," Ethan said, nudging her. "Just thinking," she replied, ruffling his hair, but her mind was racing. What was Rick hiding? And why did it feel like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to spill out? The next morning, Jenna ran into Mrs. Delaney at the mailbox. The older woman was clutching her notebook, her eyes gleaming with purpose. "I saw her again," she whispered, glancing around as if Rick might be lurking behind a hydrangea. "Last night, after the fireworks, a woman, young, maybe 30, she came out of the pool house and went straight to Rick's back door." Jenna frowned. "Are you sure? It was dark." "I know what I saw," Mrs. Delaney insisted, "and I'm going to prove it. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. We need to get to the bottom of this." Jenna hesitated. She wasn't one to stir the pot, but Ethan's story about the woman in the red dress nagged at her. And then there was Rick's evasiveness, the way he dodged questions at the barbecue. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll back you up. But we need evidence, not just suspicions." Miss Delaney grinned like a detective in a noir film. "Oh, I'll get evidence. You just wait." Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed with quiet speculation. Some residents, like Linda, thought it was all a misunderstanding. Others, like the Thompsons, who'd been fined twice for their overgrown hedges, were eager to see Rick taken down a peg. "He's not above the rules," Mr. Thompson grumbled, trimming his bushes with a vengeance. "If he's hiding something, we deserve to know." Jenna tried to stay neutral, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She started paying closer attention to Rick's house, noting the times he left for work, the delivery vans that came and went, and the faint glow from the pool house late at night. Ethan, ever the aspiring sleuth, offered to help. "I could sneak over there," he said, brandishing a flashlight, "like a stakeout." "Absolutely not," Jenna said, though she had to admit the idea was tempting. Instead, she decided to do some digging of her own. She pulled up the HOA bylaws, scouring them for anything that might justify an investigation into Rick's property. She also started chatting with neighbors, casually asking if they'd noticed anything unusual. By the time the emergency HOA meeting was scheduled, Willow Creek was a powder keg of curiosity and suspicion. Rick, oblivious or pretending to be, sent out his usual cheerful email reminding everyone to bring their own chairs. But as Jenna helped Mrs. Delaney set up folding tables in the community center, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something that would change Willow Creek forever. The Willow Creek Community Center smelled like stale coffee and lemon cleaner, its fluorescent lights casting a sterile glow over the folding chairs arranged in uneven rows. The emergency HOA meeting was set to start at 7 p.m., but by 6:45 the room was already packed with neighbors clutching water bottles and notepads, their whispers buzzing like static. Jenna Carter sat near the front, next to Mrs. Delaney, who was flipping through her spiral notebook with the intensity of a prosecutor preparing for trial. Ethan, banned from attending due to his age, was at home sulking, texting Jenna every 5 minutes for updates. Rick Hargrove stood at the podium, adjusting his glasses with a practiced calm that bordered on theatrical. He wore a navy polo and his signature khaki shorts, looking every bit the suburban kingpin. "All right, folks," he began, his voice carrying that familiar blend of authority and charm. "Let's get started. I know there's been some chatter, so let's clear the air and keep this civil." Mrs. Delaney shot up from her seat, her bifocals glinting. "Civil? I'll tell you what's not civil, Richard. Hiding a stranger in your pool house and thinking we wouldn't notice." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mr. Thompson, still bitter about his hedge fines, nodded vigorously. Linda, the yoga enthusiast, sighed and checked her phone. Jenna stayed quiet, watching Rick's face for any crack in his composure. Rick raised his hands, palms out, like a preacher calming a congregation. "Now, hold on, Evelyn," he said, using Mrs. Delaney's first name in a way that made her bristle. "I've already told you there's nothing going on in my pool house. It's just storage. You're seeing shadows and jumping to conclusions." "Shadows don't wear red dresses," Mrs. Delaney snapped, holding up her notebook. "I've got dates, times, and descriptions. A woman, young, maybe 30, coming and going from your backyard at all hours. Explain that, Mr. President." The room erupted in gasps and side conversations. Jenna leaned forward, her pulse quickening. She'd been skeptical of Mrs. Delaney's claims, but the specificity, dates, times, a red dress, matched Ethan's story too closely to ignore. Rick's smile tightened, just for a second, before he regained control. "Evelyn, I respect your vigilance, but you're mistaken. I've had some contractors over, working on the pool house. Maybe you saw one of their wives dropping off lunch or something." "Contractors?" Mr. Thompson scoffed, crossing his arms. "What kind of contractor works at midnight?" "Yeah, and what about the perfume?" added Mrs. Patel, who lived 2 houses down from Rick. "I smelled it too last week, when I was watering my roses. Jasmine, strong as anything." Rick's jaw twitched, but he kept his tone light. "Look, I'm flattered you all think I'm leading some double life, but this is ridiculous. My pool house is full of junk, old furniture, holiday decorations. If you don't believe me, I'll give you a tour myself."
Jenna raised her hand, surprising herself. "I'll take you up on that," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Let's settle this. Open the pool house. Let us see for ourselves." The room went quiet, all eyes on Rick. For the first time, his confidence seemed to waver. He adjusted his glasses again, a nervous tick. "Sure, Jenna," he said after a beat. "But not tonight. It's a mess in there. How about Saturday? I'll have it cleaned up by then." "Saturday's too late," Mrs. Delaney said, her voice sharp. "If you've got nothing to hide, open it now." The crowd murmured in agreement, the air thick with anticipation. Rick looked trapped, his eyes darting to the exit, as if calculating his escape. But before he could respond, Linda stood up, her yoga pants swishing. "Guys, come on, this is getting out of hand. Rick's been a great HOA president. Maybe we should trust him." "Trust is earned," Mr. Thompson shot back, "and I'm tired of his rules applying to everyone but him." The meeting spiraled into chaos, with neighbors shouting over each other and Rick trying to restore order. Jenna sat back, her mind racing. Rick's offer to show the pool house on Saturday felt like a stall tactic. Why not now? What was he hiding? And why did she feel a chill every time she thought about that pool house? After the meeting, as neighbors spilled out into the parking lot, Jenna caught up with Mrs. Delaney. "You really think there's a woman living there?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "I know what I saw," Mrs. Delaney said, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. "And I'm not stopping until I prove it. You with me?" Jenna hesitated. She wasn't a detective, and she had Ethan to think about. But the mystery was pulling her in, like a current she couldn't resist. "I'm in," she said finally. "But we need a plan, something better than storming his backyard." Mrs. Delaney's eyes gleamed. "I've got an idea. Meet me tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Bring coffee." The next morning, Jenna arrived at Mrs. Delaney's house with 2 lattes and a knot of apprehension. The older woman was already on her porch, wearing a sun hat and holding a pair of binoculars. "We're going to watch his house," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Every move he makes. If that woman's there, we'll catch her." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that a little invasive?" "It's not invasive if he's breaking HOA rules," Mrs. Delaney said, handing Jenna the binoculars. "Section 4, Article 2, no unauthorized residence without board approval. If he's got someone living in that pool house, he's violating the bylaws." Jenna sighed but took the binoculars. They spent the morning on Mrs. Delaney's porch, sipping coffee and watching Rick's house. He left for work at 8:30, his silver SUV backing out of the driveway with precision. The pool house remained dark, its windows reflecting the morning sun. But around 10 a.m., Jenna spotted something, a flicker of movement behind the glass, like someone adjusting a blind. "Did you see that?" she whispered, passing the binoculars to Mrs. Delaney. The older woman squinted through the lenses. "Gotcha," she muttered, scribbling in her notebook.
That's no contractor. They kept watch until noon, but nothing else happened. Jenna was starting to feel foolish, like a kid playing spy, when Ethan texted her. "Mom, I saw her again. Red dress, by the fence. She looked scared." Jenna's heart skipped. "We need to talk to Ethan," she told Mrs. Delaney. "He's seen her twice now. He might know something we don't." They found Ethan at home, sprawled on the couch with his skateboard balanced on his knees. "Tell us everything," Jenna said, sitting across from him. "No exaggerating." Ethan sat up, his eyes bright with the thrill of being taken seriously. "Okay, so the first time was last week when I was skating. She came out of the pool house, looked around, and ran to Rick's back door." Ethan's words hung in the air like smoke, curling around Jenna's thoughts as she sat across from him in their cluttered living room. The woman in the red dress, slipping from the pool house to Rick's back door, looking scared. It was too specific to dismiss as a kid's imagination. Mrs. Delaney, perched on the edge of Jenna's couch with her notebook open, scribbled furiously, her pen scratching like a detective in a pulp novel. "Scared, you say?" she prompted, peering at Ethan over her bifocals. "What kind of scared? Like she was running from something?" Ethan shrugged, his skateboard still balanced on his knees. "I don't know. She kept looking over her shoulder, like she thought someone was watching her. Then she went inside Rick's house real fast." Jenna exchanged a glance with Mrs. Delaney. The older woman's eyes gleamed with determination, but Jenna felt a twinge of unease. This was no longer just neighborhood gossip. It was starting to feel like something darker. "Okay, Ethan," she said, keeping her voice calm. "No more snooping around Rick's house, got it? If you see anything else, you tell me right away." Ethan rolled his eyes but nodded. "Fine, but can I at least help with the stakeout?" "Stakeout?" Jenna said, raising an eyebrow. Mrs. Delaney grinned, undeterred. "That's exactly what we're doing tonight. We're going to catch this mystery woman in the act. You, me, and maybe Linda if I can convince her to stop meditating for 5 minutes." Jenna hesitated. A stakeout sounded like a step too far, trespassing into private investigator territory. But Ethan's story, combined with her own glimpses of movement in the pool house, had her hooked. "All right," she said finally, "but we're not breaking any laws. We watch from a distance, and that's it." "Deal," Mrs. Delaney said, snapping her notebook shut. "Meet me at my place, 10 p.m. Wear dark clothes." That evening, Jenna pulled on a black hoodie and told Ethan to stay put with strict instructions to call if anything went wrong. The cul-de-sac was quiet as she slipped out, the streetlights casting long shadows across the lawns. Mrs. Delaney was waiting on her porch, dressed in a navy tracksuit that made her look like a retiree turned ninja. Linda, reluctantly recruited, stood beside her, clutching a thermos of chamomile tea and muttering about bad karma. "This is a terrible idea," Linda whispered as they crept toward the edge of Mrs. Delaney's property, where a low hedge offered a view of Rick's backyard. "If Rick catches us, we'll be the ones explaining ourselves at the next HOA meeting." "Then keep your voice down," Mrs. Delaney hissed, pulling out her binoculars. "Jenna, you take the left side. Linda, watch the right. If that woman shows up, we'll see her." They settled in, crouching behind the hedge like suburban spies. The night was warm, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and blooming jasmine. Jasmine, Jenna noted, just like Mrs. Patel had mentioned. Rick's house was dark, his SUV parked in the driveway. The pool house, partially obscured by azaleas, glowed faintly, as if a single lamp was burning inside. For an hour, nothing happened. Linda fidgeted, sipping her tea and complaining about mosquitoes. Mrs. Delaney scanned the yard with her binoculars, muttering about patience. Jenna, her nerves fraying, kept her eyes on the pool house door, half expecting it to swing open. Just as she was about to suggest calling it quits, a shadow moved behind the pool house's frosted glass. "There," Jenna whispered, pointing. Mrs. Delaney swung her binoculars around, and Linda froze, her thermos forgotten. The shadow grew clearer, a human shape, pacing. Then, the pool house door cracked open, and a figure stepped out. It was a woman, young, with long hair pulled into a messy bun. She wore a red dress, just as Ethan had described, and her movements were quick,
nervous. She glanced around, then darted toward Rick's back door, disappearing inside. "Holy moly," Mrs. Delaney breathed, scribbling in her notebook. "That's her. That's the woman." Linda's eyes were wide. "Okay, I take it back. This is weird. Why's she sneaking around like that?" Jenna's mind raced. The woman didn't look like a contractor or a delivery person. She looked secretive. "We need to find out who she is," Jenna said, her voice low but firm. "But we can't just barge in there. We need proof, something solid." Mrs. Delaney nodded. "I say we check the pool house when Rick's at work tomorrow. If she's living there, there'll be signs. Clothes, food, something." "That's breaking and entering," Linda protested. "We could get arrested." "Not if we're careful," Mrs. Delaney countered. "The HOA bylaws give the board inspection rights in cases of suspected violations." "I'm on the board. I say this counts." Jenna wasn't so sure, but the image of the woman in the red dress, moving like a ghost in the night, pushed her doubts aside. "Let's sleep on it," she said. "We'll decide in the morning." Back home, Jenna couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying the night's events. The woman's nervous glances, the faint glow in the pool house, Rick's evasive answers at the meeting. It all pointed to something he didn't want the neighborhood to know. But what? A girlfriend seemed too simple. The fear Ethan had described, the secrecy of her movements, suggested something more complicated. Was she hiding from someone? Was Rick helping her or keeping her there? The next morning, Jenna met Mrs. Delaney and Linda at the coffee shop down the street to plan their next move. Mrs. Delaney was all business, her notebook now filled with timelines and sketches of Rick's backyard. "We go in at noon," she said, sipping her latte. "Rick's at work until at least 3. We'll be in and out before anyone notices." Linda groaned. "I'm only here to keep you two out of jail, but if we're doing this, we need a cover story. Like, we're checking for, I don't know, code violations." "Exactly," Mrs. Delaney said, tapping her pen. "Leaky pipes, electrical hazards. We're concerned neighbors, doing our civic duty." Jenna nodded, though her stomach churned. "Okay, but we're just looking. No touching anything, no taking anything. If we find something, we call the police." "Agreed," Mrs. Delaney said, though her tone suggested she'd bend that rule if needed. At noon, the 3 women approached Rick's backyard gate, armed with a clipboard and a vague excuse about inspecting the property line. The cul-de-sac was quiet, most residents at work or indoors. Jenna's heart pounded as Mrs. Delaney picked the gate's lock with a hairpin, a skill she claimed to have learned from her late husband, a locksmith. "Don't judge," she muttered as the gate swung open. The pool house loomed ahead, its glass walls fogged with condensation. Jenna tried the door, locked. Mrs. Delaney, undeterred, produced her hairpin again, but before she could start, Linda grabbed her arm. "Wait," she whispered, pointing to the ground. There, in the soft dirt near the door, was a footprint. Small, delicate, with the distinct outline of a high-heeled sandal. "That's no contractor," Jenna said, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Delaney's eyes narrowed. "We're getting in there, one way or another." The footprint in the dirt outside Rick's pool house seemed to pulse with significance, a silent accusation in the midday heat. Jenna Carter stood frozen, her eyes locked on the delicate outline of the high-heeled sandal, while Mrs. Delaney fumbled with her hairpin at the pool house door. Linda, clutching the clipboard they'd brought as a flimsy cover story, whispered, "This is a bad idea. We should call the police now." "And tell them what?" Mrs. Delaney hissed, her bifocals slipping down her nose. "That we found a footprint? They'll laugh us out of Willow Creek. We need proof, something real." Jenna's heart hammered, but she nodded. "She's right. We're here now. Let's look, but we're quick. 5 minutes tops." Mrs. Delaney's hairpin clicked, and the lock gave way with a soft pop. The door creaked open, releasing a faint waft of jasmine perfume mixed with something musty like damp carpet. The 3 women exchanged glances, their bravado faltering. Jenna stepped inside first, her sneakers silent on the tiled floor, followed by Mrs. Delaney and a reluctant Linda.
The pool house was small, no bigger than a studio apartment, with frosted glass walls that diffused the sunlight into a hazy glow. At first glance, it looked like Rick had described, a storage space cluttered with cardboard boxes, a folded ping-pong table, and a stack of plastic lawn chairs. But as Jenna's eyes adjusted, she noticed details that didn't fit. A narrow cot in the corner, neatly made with a floral quilt. A small table holding a half-eaten sandwich and a glass of water. A pair of women's sandals, red, strappy, high-heeled, tucked under the cot. "Holy moly," Mrs. Delaney muttered, her notebook already open. "Someone's living here." Linda's voice trembled. "This isn't right. Why would Rick let someone stay here like this? It's creepy." Jenna moved closer to the cot, her pulse racing. On the table next to the sandwich was a paperback novel with a dog-eared page, a romance with a shirtless cowboy on the cover. Beside it, a tube of lipstick, bright coral. She resisted the urge to touch anything, remembering her own rule, but her eyes caught something else, a small photo frame face down on the table. She hesitated, then used the edge of her sleeve to nudge it upright. The photo showed a young woman, maybe 30, with long dark hair and a shy smile. She stood in front of a Ferris wheel, clutching a cotton candy stick. Jenna didn't recognize her, but the red dress she wore was unmistakable. The same one Ethan and Mrs. Delaney had described. "Guys, look at this," Jenna whispered, pointing to the photo. Mrs. Delaney snapped a picture with her phone, her hands shaking. "That's her. That's the woman I saw." Linda backed toward the door. "Okay, we've seen enough. Let's get out of here before Rick comes back." But Jenna couldn't tear herself away. The pool house felt like a puzzle, each detail a piece of a larger picture. She scanned the room, spotting a duffel bag half hidden behind a box of Christmas lights. Kneeling, she peered inside without touching it. Clothes, mostly women's, folded neatly. A pair of jeans, a few tops, and tucked in a side pocket, a driver's license. "Evelyn," Jenna said, her voice tight. "Come here." Mrs. Delaney crouched beside her, squinting at the license. The name read Claire Monroe, and the photo matched the woman in the frame. The address listed was in a town 2 hours away, and the license had expired 6 months ago. "Claire Monroe," Mrs. Delaney repeated, scribbling it down. "Who is she, and why is she hiding in Rick's pool house?" Jenna's mind spun. Was Claire a girlfriend, like the rumors suggested? But why the secrecy, the expired license, the nervous glances Ethan had described? It felt less like a love affair and more like someone on the run. Before they could dig further, a car door slammed outside. Linda gasped, nearly dropping her clipboard. "That's Rick's SUV! He's back!" Panic surged through Jenna. "Out, now!" she hissed, ushering the others toward the door. They slipped outside, Mrs. Delaney locking the door behind them with her hairpin. They ducked behind the azaleas just as Rick's footsteps crunched on the gravel path leading to the backyard. From their hiding spot, Jenna peeked through the foliage. Rick, still in his work clothes, khakis and a button-down, carried a grocery bag. He glanced around, his face tense, then headed straight for the pool house. He knocked softly, 3 quick taps, before unlocking the door and stepping inside. "He's meeting her," Mrs. Delaney whispered, her eyes gleaming. "We should confront him now." "No," Jenna said, grabbing her arm. "We need to be smart about this. We've got her name, her photo. Let's find out who Claire Monroe is first." Linda, pale and sweating, nodded vigorously. "I'm with Jenna. This is way bigger than HOA rules now." They crept back through the gate, their hearts pounding, and regrouped at Mrs. Delaney's house. Jenna's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, typing Claire Monroe into a search engine. The results were sparse, a few social media profiles that didn't match, a LinkedIn page for someone much older. But then, buried on the 3rd page, she found a local news article from 8 months ago. Woman reported missing after leaving bar. The article was short, with a grainy photo of Claire Monroe, the same shy smile from the pool house frame. She'd vanished after a night out in her hometown, leaving her purse and phone behind.
Police had no leads, and her family feared foul play. Jenna's stomach dropped. "She's a missing person," she said, showing the article to Mrs. Delaney and Linda. "And she's living in Rick's pool house." Mrs. Delaney's face hardened. "That son of a gun.
He's been hiding her this whole time." "But why?" Linda asked, her voice small. "Is he helping her? Or keeping her?" The question hung unanswered, heavy as the summer air. Jenna thought of Rick's charm, his evasiveness, the way he'd stalled at the HOA meeting. Was he a hero, hiding Claire from danger, or something far worse? "We need to talk to her," Jenna said finally, "without Rick around. If she's scared, like Ethan said, she might tell us the truth." Mrs. Delaney nodded. "Tomorrow, when he's at work again. We'll knock on that pool house door and get answers." Linda groaned. "You two are going to get us all arrested, or worse." But Jenna was resolute. Claire Munro wasn't just a rumor anymore. She was a person, and whatever was happening in that pool house, Willow Creek couldn't ignore it any longer. As Jenna walked home, the cul-de-sac felt different, its perfection cracked like a chipped teacup. She glanced at Rick's house, the pool house now dark, and wondered what secrets were unfolding behind its frosted glass. Tomorrow, she told herself, they'd get to the truth, no matter what it cost.
The morning sun hung low over Willow Creek Lane, casting long shadows across the cul-de-sac as Jenna Carter, Mrs. Delaney, and Linda gathered on Mrs. Delaney's porch. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of their discovery pressing down like a storm cloud. Claire Monroe, a missing woman, was living in Rick Hargrove's pool house, and today they planned to confront her, without Rick's interference. Jenna's heart thudded as she sipped her coffee, her eyes fixed on Rick's house, waiting for his silver SUV to pull out of the driveway. "He's late today," Mrs. Delaney muttered, checking her watch. Her notebook, now a tattered testament to their investigation, lay open on the wicker table, filled with notes about Claire's red dress, the expired license, and the news article about her disappearance. "He's usually gone by now." Linda, clutching her thermos of chamomile tea, shifted nervously. "Maybe he knows we were in there yesterday. What if he's, I don't know, doing something to cover his tracks?" Jenna shook her head, though the thought had crossed her mind. "Let's stay focused. We wait until he leaves, then we knock on the pool house door and talk to Claire. If she's in trouble, we'll help her. If she's not, we'll figure out what's going on." At 8:45, Rick's SUV finally backed out, its engine rumbling softly. He paused at the end of the driveway, glancing toward his backyard, and Jenna's breath caught. Did he suspect they were watching? But then he drove off, disappearing around the corner, and Mrs. Delaney sprang to her feet. "Let's move," she said, grabbing her binoculars for good measure. The three women approached Rick's backyard gate, their cover story, a clipboard with a fake HOA inspection notice, feeling flimsier than ever. Jenna's palms were slick with sweat as she pushed the gate, which creaked in protest. The pool house stood ahead, its frosted glass walls silent but heavy with secrets. They moved quickly, avoiding the gravel path where they'd found the footprint, and reached the door. Jenna knocked softly. 3 gentle taps, mimicking the pattern they'd seen Rick use. "Claire?" she called, her voice low. "We're neighbors. We just want to talk." Silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then, a faint rustle came from inside, like fabric brushing against the floor. The door cracked open, and Claire Monroe peered out, her dark eyes wide with fear. She was younger than Jenna expected, her face delicate but gaunt, her red dress wrinkled and slightly too big, as if she'd lost weight since wearing it last. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Did Rick send you?" "No," Jenna said quickly, raising her hands to show she meant no harm. "We're from the neighborhood. We know you've been staying here. We want to help." Claire's eyes darted to Mrs. Delaney and Linda, then back to Jenna. "You can't be here," she said, her voice rising. "If he finds out, he's at work." Mrs. Delaney cut in, her tone firm but kind. "We saw him leave." "Claire, we know you're missing. Your family's looking for you. What's going on? Is Rick keeping you here?" Claire's face crumpled, and for a moment Jenna thought she might slam the door.
but then she stepped back, letting them inside. The pool house was as they'd seen it yesterday, cot, table, duffel bag, but now it felt alive with Claire's presence, her fear palpable. She sank onto the cot, hugging her knees. "He's not keeping me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's helping me." Jenna exchanged a glance with Mrs. Delaney, who was already scribbling in her notebook. "Helping you how?" Jenna asked, sitting on a lawn chair to give Claire space. "Why are you hiding?" Claire took a shaky breath, her eyes fixed on the floor. 8 months ago, I was at a bar with friends. A guy started following me, wouldn't leave me alone. I got scared, left early, but he followed me home. Kept showing up, leaving notes, flowers. I went to the police, but they couldn't do much without proof. Then one night, he broke in. I got away, but I knew he'd find me again. Linda's hand flew to her mouth. "That's awful. Who was he?" "I don't know his name," Claire said, her voice breaking. "Just his face. I was too scared to go back home, so I stayed with friends, then a shelter. That's where I met Rick." "Rick," Mrs. Delaney said, her pen pausing. "How'd he get involved?" "He volunteers at the shelter," Claire explained. "He heard my story, offered to help, said he had a place I could stay, off the grid, until I figured things out. He brought me here to the pool house. He's been bringing me food, clothes, keeping me safe." Jenna frowned. It sounded noble, but something didn't add up. "Why the secrecy? Why not tell anyone? And why are you sneaking around at night?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm terrified. I keep thinking the guy, will find me. Rick said it's safer if no one knows I'm here. Not even the neighbors. He said people talk and word could get out. I only go to his house at night for showers or when he brings supplies." Mrs. Delaney's eyes narrowed. "Sounds convenient for Rick. How do we know he's not the one you should be scared of?" Claire shook her head fiercely. "No, he's been kind. He doesn't ask for anything. He's just protective." Jenna's gut twisted. Protective? Or controlling? She thought of Rick's charm, his evasiveness at the HOA meeting, his quick offer to show the pool house later. Was he a good Samaritan? Or was there more to his motives? Before she could press further, tires crunched on gravel outside. Claire gasped, bolting upright. "That's him. You have to go." But it was too late. The pool house door swung open, and Rick stood there, his face a mask of shock that quickly hardened into anger. "What the hell are you doing in here?" he demanded, his eyes sweeping over
Jenna, Mrs. Delaney, and Linda. Jenna stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We know about Claire, Rick. We know she's missing, and we know you're hiding her. Start talking." Rick's jaw clenched, but Claire stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Rick, it's okay. They're trying to help. I told them everything." For a moment, Rick looked like he might explode. Then his shoulders sagged, and he ran a hand through his hair. "Fine," he said, his voice low. "You want the truth? Claire's telling it. I'm keeping her safe from a stalker. I didn't tell anyone because I knew you'd all turn it into a circus, like you're doing now." Mrs. Delaney scoffed. "A circus? You're breaking HOA rules, hiding a resident without board approval. And how do we know you're not the creep she's running from?" Rick's face reddened, but Claire grabbed his arm. "He's not, I swear. He's the only reason I'm still here." The room fell silent, the tension thick as fog. Jenna studied Rick, searching for a lie in his eyes, but found only exhaustion. "If you're telling the truth," she said, "you need to come clean. To the police, to the neighborhood. Claire can't live like this, hiding in a pool house." Rick nodded slowly. "You're right, I got in over my head. I thought I was doing the right thing." That afternoon, Rick and Claire went to the police, with Jenna and Mrs. Delaney as witnesses. Claire's story checked out. Her stalker was still at large, and Rick's volunteer work at the shelter was verified. The HOA held an emergency meeting that evening, where Rick resigned as president, his reputation bruised but intact. Claire moved to a safe house arranged by the police, her family tearfully reunited with her. Willow Creek slowly returned to normal, but the cul-de-sac was forever changed. Jenna, now the interim HOA president, found herself looking at her neighbors differently,
wondering what other secrets lay behind their perfect lawns. And as she sat on her porch that night, watching Ethan skateboard under the streetlights, she smiled faintly, knowing they'd uncovered the truth. Just this once.